Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is sponsored by Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with the intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Products include Westlaw, Practical Law, and Firm Central legal practice management software for small law firms. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Welcome back to Access to Democracy. I'm Alan Miller, and I am very happy to have as a first-time guest Imam Asad Zaman from the Muslim American Society of Minnesota.
Hello.
And hello. We met recently, and I'm really pleased that you have agreed to come on the show, and let's hope this is the first of many.
Looking forward to it.
So give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, my name is Asad Zaman. I'm an Imam with the Muslim American Society. I have been in Minnesota since 1992, where I originally came to study, and I went to the Minneapolis Community College, which is now called MCTC, and I guess I stayed.
That's happened to a lot of us.
Yes.
Minnesota grows on one.
Yes.
And not only did you stay, but the Muslim community in Minnesota has grown greatly since you first arrived here.
Yes, when I first arrived, we only had 3 masjids or mosques, and we now have 65. You know, it definitely
it's phenomenal growth.
It's a phenomenal growth in the last 25 years.
And a lot of people say, what is an imam? We know what a priest is, we know what a rabbi is, so maybe let's start there.
Sure, an imam is a religious leader. The word imam literally means leader. So a person, linguistically in the Arabic language, the word imam is used not just for a religious purpose, but somebody could be an imam in electrical engineering, or, you know, in the field of building tall structures or whatever. So imam just means leader, but at a practical level, the Muslims use the word imam to refer to a religious leader who leads them in prayer or provides religious advice and guidance, functions that are very similar to a priest or a rabbi.
As a matter of fact, you founded the first Rabbi Imam Society in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I co-founded it with Rabbi Amy Eilberg, and it's the Rabbi Imam Roundtable. A group of 10 or 11 rabbis and imams have been getting together every other month. Well, sometimes we skip a meeting or two. But that's been going on now for about 3-4 years.
I think 2011 was when I noted that it was founded.
Yes, so 5 years.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So now that we've got that behind us, and people know who you are. The Muslim population in Minnesota has grown tremendously, even in the 20 years that I'm here. So how do we explain that growth? And actually the Muslim population around the world, which I understand is 1.2 billion, certainly one of the biggest religions.
Well, according to most researchers, the number is between 1.6 and 1.8 billion on Earth. But who's counting? Clearly some people are counting. Well, what accounts for this growth? Well, there are two factors. One is the demographic factor, which is Muslims tend to have more babies worldwide than, for example, Western Europe. Right? In the United States, I think Hispanics and Muslims have more babies than the standard, or they're higher than average. So that's one factor, which is the demographic factor.
Similar to the Hasidic community,
yes,
both in the United States and Israel, where it's not uncommon for a family to have 10 children.
Correct. Well, 10 would be a little bit uncommon among Muslims. It would be closer to between 4 and 6. But yeah. The second factor is Islam is there's a lot of conversion. Actually, becoming Muslim is very easy. A person literally has to say, I believe that there is no God except God and Muhammad is his messenger, and the person becomes Muslim. So conversions are a significant factor in worldwide growth of Islam. And in America, there is a third factor, which is immigration. So in the state of Minnesota, it is estimated that about 35% of Muslims are foreign-born.
And we've been very fortunate on this show. We've had many interviews with Keith Ellison, who was the first Muslim elected to Congress,
Good guy.
still is, and terrific individual, human being, etc. But like everything else, Muslims are undergoing in this country, particularly in this presidential election year, a lot of criticism, a lot of unfair criticism. You're being painted with a brush that is well undeserved and castigated by some elements, based mainly, in my estimation, on misunderstanding. So you, and I know from speaking to you, you are a man of peace. You are a person who wants no more than I want or anybody wants for their family and or their religion.
So look, there is a lot of misunderstanding, and some of it is understandable because people naturally fear what they don't know. However, there is a second element, which is that it is politically expedient for some people to have a scapegoat. So we have experienced this in America before. We have had something called the Red Scare. And immediately after 9/11, I actually met with several people of German heritage. I mean, they've been in America for 4 or 5 generations. They're Americans. But I had a particular friend. He's still a friend. I have a friend who used to be a colonel in the Army Reserve, and he told me an interesting story. He said that after the First and the Second World Wars, because he was of German heritage, his parents and grandparents used to attend church where Mass was delivered in German, and the speeches were delivered in German. And some of their churches were firebombed. They were basically castigated as unpatriotic unless they would stop using the German language in their churches. So America has been through this several rounds. It's our turn at the whipping post.
And we're going through it again.
Yes.
In World War II, what did we do to Japanese citizens? We rounded them up and we put them into internment camps, which are no different than concentration camps, except that we didn't execute them as Hitler did with 6 million people. 11 million, but 6 million who were Jews, and including relatives that I never met. But
Yeah,
you know,
that's a stain on America's soul.
and we've had several stains like that. Look what
Yes.
we've done to Native Americans, to the Indians. We have taken their land, and where do they end up? On reservations, which are mostly poverty-stricken, high crime, lack of education, and we have had many treaties with Native Americans, which we've breached and ignored. So yes, that's another stain.
So one of my philosophies, and this comes from my faith as a Muslim, is, of course, I was not there in the past when the internment of Japanese citizens happened, or when the violations of the treaties with the Native Americans happened. So what I can do is deplore it or teach about it and learn from it. The more important lesson to be learned from this is for us to ask the question, well, what can we do keeping that history in mind so that our future is better? So I was pleased to note that a major political party, the Democratic Party, this year chose to focus 7 Muslims on their stage, several of them at prime time. That speaker after speaker reaffirmed the right of all Americans to be in America and contribute to its greatness. So that was a very
And
positive
even those
thing.
who are not yet Americans in terms of being naturalized still have that right to go forward and seek citizenship.
Yes, so I'm a big supporter of the DREAM Act. So look, human beings, there is a basic human dignity that we have to give to all human beings, even people whom we disagree with politically, or people who are of a different religion or a race or ethnicity or other background or any criteria by which a person can be separated from another person. So no matter what, the person is endowed by God with a certain dignity, right? So this is mentioned in the Quran, where God said, and indeed we have dignified all the children of Adam. So it is important for us, if we can find commonality, that's fine. So like you and I discovered a commonality in my alma mater, Minneapolis Community College, where you used to teach. So that's a commonality. That's a basis for better interaction.
1 degree of separation.
Right, exactly. But even if that commonality had not existed, then we are both humans and we are part of this human family. And that's a core value, I think, that's true for not just for Islam, but also for Judaism and Christianity and many other religions.
And what do most people want? They want to be free to raise their family in a peaceful existence in an environment. And yes, we have human beings who are tempted, who fall off the right path. We've seen it here in Minneapolis, where even some students at MCTC ended up going over to fight for ISIS. And I'm not even sure that they knew what they were going to fight for. I mean, it seems to have been a period that has been tamped down now. But, and some of them died.
Sure, yes.
For what?
It's very sad. It's very sad.
For what?
So I'll say this. Look, the Pope was asked recently, why would you not address Islamic extremism? And the Pope said, well, if I start talking about Islamic extremism, then I'm going to also have to start talking about Catholic extremism, because that is also a fact. So the reality of it is, you can have, in fact, the world does have people of all religions doing bad things. So in Myanmar, Burma, there are Buddhist monks that are conducting murders. In India, there are
In the name of God.
In the name of God, in the
Yeah,
name of religion.
That's even worse.
In India, there are mobs doing this in the name of Hinduism. Suicide bombing, which is perceived to be a Muslim curse, was actually invented in Sri Lanka by the Tamil rebels who are Buddhist. right? So this is like most people don't know these realities. Now, ISIS is a fact of life. It is an unfortunate fact of life. I personally do not know a single Muslim who supports ISIS. In fact, the Pew Research leads us to believe that over 95% of Muslims abhor the idea of ISIS. But it's nevertheless a fact of life. So yeah.
And it has to be dealt with.
Correct.
And I'm not sure. We have a tendency to be overly violent. I don't know where that fits societally. In the case of ISIS, I guess that's the only path that seems to be open. They don't seem to be open to negotiation. So one would wonder.
Well, there are two issues there. So one is ISIS has an army on the ground, and armies on the ground are dealt with by other armies on the ground, right? So that is a different issue. Now, as for a person who, so this whole talk about radicalization. So as Muslims, the vast majority of Muslims have concern about the way the US government is currently conducting anti-radicalization programs. So I'll give as an example. I once delivered a speech because I do training for police officers. So I was invited to deliver a speech to police recruits. And we were talking about Islam, and we were talking about the US government's tracking of terrorism financing. And I raised the concerns of the Muslim community about how the US government handles it. And one of the recruits asked me a question, but wouldn't you want to do that? So yes. So if a Muslim were to send money to ISIS, that person deserves to be arrested because that is a crime. Nobody's debating this. Just like if an Irish Catholic were to send money to the Irish Republican Army, he deserves to be arrested because he's supporting terrorism. Okay, but here is what we don't do, or we did not do back when the IRA was recruiting money in America, which it was doing in the 70s and 80s, right? We did not arrest everyone who frequented the bar where he collected money, right? So that's being done right now.
And the overreaction.
Yes. So this overreaction is the problem, and so then the recruit goes, "Oh, I see it. So you may have a point here." So in the same way, look, we know from our facts, the statistics are telling us that 85 or higher percentage of mass shootings in America are conducted by white males. Okay, so we do not surveil areas where white males congregate. And then if you start looking at the characteristics of mass shootings, which between in the last 20 years has killed more than 4 times the number of people killed in 9/11, right? And these are red-blooded American citizens who have been killed.
Many more than that.
Yeah, perhaps many. Yeah, actually you're right. It's in the hundreds of thousands, right? So in the last 10, 20 years, this has happened. And so we do not say that if a person is white and is male and is Christian and has a desire to use firearms, then these people who carry these 4 characteristics should be surveilled. Although the people who carry these characteristics have killed more than 100,000 people. So there are other ways, behavioral patterns that can help us stop this, right? So the same should be applied to Muslims.
And what a lot of people don't know, and I heard it from one of the police chiefs within the last week, talking about how many Muslim officers there were in and I don't remember which city it was from. And in fact, one Muslim police officer was killed within the last week or so among that group of 5, I think, who were slain in or around Chicago. Or how many are in the armed forces. Yes, we hear about a colonel who went berserk and shot a few people on the base and killed a few people on the base, and I certainly don't want to denigrate the fact that it's murder. But how many other soldiers have, for one reason or another, whether it's post-traumatic stress or otherwise, gone berserk and killed people. The fact of the matter is that there are many Muslims in the service now, in the armed services, and certainly I think what was shocking to America was to hear Mr. and Mrs. Khan at the Democratic Convention and their story. And when they were attacked by Donald Trump, the reaction, the groundswell against Trump has been overwhelming.
Yeah, so that's an example of a positive interaction.
An educational interaction.
Yes.
And
So now, if we come back to this discussion about the colonel who fragged his colleagues, we need to address several issues. So there is military on military violence that is a part of life. It is unfortunate every time it occurs.
being
it is
in the
criminal.
military, what are you trained to do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So however, so there is this issue. So for example, in the year 2015, there were 350 or more than 350 mass shootings, 2 of whom happened to be conducted by Muslims, right? And of course, Muslims are about 1 or 2% of the population. So the fact that 2 out of 350 some are Muslim is actually average. I mean, obviously none of them are, each individual shooting is a problem. But there is a part of this problem that the media has to own. Okay? So I have not seen in the last 5 years the word terrorist being used to describe any human being who is not of the Muslim faith.
Except with the Oklahoma bombing.
Yeah, but that's
And that
not in the
goes back
yeah,
away.
That was before 9/11,
Yeah.
right? So why is that? Why is it that the religion of the perpetrator, who is Muslim, is discussed, but the religion of the hero is not discussed? So when Charlie Hebdo attack happened, there was a Muslim police officer who saved the lives of about 15 or 20 Jewish people and paid the ultimate price. He died saving their lives. Why does the media not talk that he was Muslim? Or the recent bomb that was found in Times Square, which was defused by a Muslim police officer. And there are 400 Muslim police officers in the city of New York. So this is part of the media bias that needs to be confronted head on, that this is a problem.
Education. It comes back to education. It comes back to understanding. It comes back to tolerance. And there hasn't been, we have a tendency to overreact, as we did on the 9/11, as we did in World War II, as we have done against Native Americans. There is that, and the tendencies even in Congress. You get the Patriot Act. Everybody is voting for the Patriot Act, which took away a lot of our civil rights.
Yes.
But we have that overreaction and fear. And I believe that education has to be the answer. And we have to expend funds to educate our people.
I think historians will look
tolerance.
back at the Patriot Act and mark it as a inflection point when constitutional protections for all Americans were stripped away. So in many ways, Muslims are now the canaries in the coal mines. So if we can create a law to marginalize Muslims, that's fine, because most people are like, well, Muslims cause problems, so they deserve to be marginalized according to some mindsets. But they don't realize that these laws, once placed on the books, will get used against everybody.
And get distorted as
Yes.
well. And overused, yes.
And that's happening in America already. The Patriot Act has not made life better for the average American person.
It's really taken huge chunks out of our Bill of Rights. And unfortunately, this particular Supreme Court,
Yes.
perhaps up until the death of Scalia last year, has been implicit with that. And it's very unfortunate. I see things like students in France, and they're told that they are not allowed to wear the hijab. Well, that's part of the religion as I understand it. And at other times, it's been people who were told that they couldn't wear yarmulkes. That seems to have faded, but the hijab issue is more promising or prominent today simply because the focus on Muslims is much more
I'll give you an
prominent
example.
today.
Look, if I think the average American would not have a problem identifying as extremism a law that says all women must wear a headscarf, as they have in Iran. Okay, so if a woman such as your wife wanted to walk in the street, she would be required to wear a headscarf. Even I, as a Muslim, my wife and my mother both wear headscarves. I don't see a need to impose that rule on anybody else who does not want to practice it of their own faith.
But you shouldn't be punished because you follow it.
Yes. So now, so the average American has no problem acknowledging or identifying easily that that rule that requires a non-Muslim woman to wear a headscarf when her religion doesn't require her to do so is a form of extremism. Also, it is a form of secular extremism, which says, well, we have nothing to do with the Catholic Church because we declared independence from them, so all expressions of religion are a problem, and we will not let Muslim women wear a headscarf because they want to. That is the exact same form of extremism. And we tend not to discuss these forms of extremism because that is what it is. Right now, for example,
prejudice runs rampant, and so does the clock on this discussion, which is down to less than a minute and a half.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we are going to have to continue this discussion, and I hope that you will certainly make yourself available to do so.
I look forward to coming back.
The only way we are going to conquer prejudice is to meet it head on.
Yes.
And there are people out there, bullies have to be confronted.
Yes.
Prejudice has to be defeated.
Thank you for partnering with us on this.
We absolutely, you know, I said recently to a cousin of mine who's a year younger than I have many more yesterdays than tomorrows, but I really want to see in the time that's left us work hard to make this country a better country and eliminate some of these prejudices and misunderstandings and ignorance, which again comes back to education.
Thank you very much.
And I thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show today. And we will have to do this again, and we will do this again. So thank you so much.